that we haven't done in the past, really. It's going to be a traditional story by Quentin Simeon. All right, take it away.
Thank you. I think Mac McIntyre needs another round of applause. He was amazing. Even off the mic. Thank you, guys. I think I'm a bit taller than this thing is set up for, though. All right. Well, good evening. How is everybody? That sucked. How is everybody? All right. My name is Quentin Simeon, like Zach said. My Yupik name is Ciissiar. It means little bug. And I come from Bethel, and I also come from Antioch, which is kind of unique, especially for this race. And I'm also related to Duttu in a very special way. I'll give you a really short story before I jump into this traditional story. Now, I was named after Mary Samuelson, and we'd go to the store and whatnot, and my mom would bring me in, and I would see Duttu, and Duttu would give me $1 or $2 or $5 or something. And I asked my mom, "Mom, how come Duttu always gives me money?" "'Cause that's your husband." So I was named after Mary Samuelson, and so that's how come he's my husband. And, I grew up in Antioch, and my uncle, my grandfather, used to run dogs. And my first experience running dogs, my Uncle John thought it would be really funny to put me on a three-dog team in a little tiny sled. And he's like, "Okay, you'll be fine. They're just gonna go around this little bend and come back." And I was like, "Okay, no problem." Big dogs too. And he's like, "Hi!" And they take off, and I was like the Ewok on Star Wars, just flying off the back of the sled. And those dogs have some torque. More than most snow machines, that's for sure. So the story I'm going to tell you is a story that's going to be one of your companions as these mushers go from here to Antioch and back again. And I know your dogs are going to be your companions, but you're also going to be accompanied by a few other things. And they'll follow you all the way up and all the way back down again. And I don't like this mic stand. I'm just going to hold it. So, long time ago, Raven used to live in this spot on this hill right near this village called Ochalamute. Ochalamute is on the Kuskokwim River. They call it Crow Village. Raven used to live there. And he used to keep his kayak just downriver, right between these two cheek-like mounds. He would hold his kayak right in between them. And he even had a fish fence, they call it chabun, and it would guide his fishing, so that would help him catch his fish in the summertime. This wasn't a very well-populated village, and Raven, he always likes attention. He always wants somebody to look at him. And so Raven was thinking, I'm kind of lonely up here, and there's no one to look at me. I'm going to go and find where there's lots of people. So he took off, and he flew, and he went down river. And then he kind of saw a couple other villages, and he was like, "Nah, they're not big enough yet, And so he started heading towards the coast. And he came to Nelson Island. And there was a big village in Nelson Island. He was thinking, I think this is the place where I want to stay. Maybe they'll notice me. Maybe they'll admire me." So Raven was sitting there, and he was on this mound, and he was looking at this big cousin, this big men's house. And there was lots of people around this men's house doing lots of kind of stuff hanging around. And there was this one girl, and she had a husband, but she had no baby. And Raven was thinking about her an awful lot. And he was thinking, how am I going to get them to notice me? And he was still a bird at that time, this Raven. Now, and so he started thinking, what if I become like one of them? One of these yurt, one of these people? And he thinks, that's what I'll do. So Raven, there was this bush or this willow tree right there, and he was kind of sitting on it. And he thought this bucket was right there, and this woman was going to come down and she was going to get a ladle and drink some water. And just before that happened, Raven turned himself into a little tiny speck, almost about his piece of dust. And he floated down into that bucket of water. And just before she took that ladle and scooped it up, she scooped him up too, and she drank him down, all the way down into her belly. And she became pregnant. And she got pregnant fast, and she got big, and she gave birth to this healthy baby boy. And he grew fast, faster than normal baby boys grow. And he became a man in this village. And after some time, and doing these activities and becoming a really good hunter, he became Nugashbak, a really good provider in his village. But he still wanted more. You see, Raven is greedy. He always wants more. He's hungry all the time. And so he was thinking of something that might satisfy him. Now at this time, long time ago, there were no stars. There was no moon, and there was no sun in our sky. And Raven was thinking, there's got to be light somewhere. And so he put on his snowshoes, and he tied them onto his feet really good. And he walked all of this land, and yet he still could not find the light that this world needed. And so as he made it back to his village, after not being successful, he decided, I'm going to take off, and maybe I'll find this light somewhere else. And so that's what he did. He turned himself back into a raven, and he spread his wings. And he took off, and he started to sludge across the sky because he still wore his darn snowshoes. And as he sludged across the sky, there were sprinkles of snow that fell here and fell there. And that became the Milky Way. Now, Raven did find this place. It had a light coming from it. It was like a big kazakh. And he looked at it and he was like, that is strange. That's where somebody stole that light and put it in there. And so he went to this house. And he went in there, and there was another woman, and she had no baby, and he was like, I know this trick already. And so he waited for her to come out, but this was a different place. It had lots of trees. And so he turned himself into a pine needle, and he floated down, and he landed in the stream just as she came down to ladle herself some drink. And she drank him down into her belly again. And then he was able to go into this house. And she became pregnant, and she got really big. And in this house there was 3 bags or 3 boxes. And Raven, after he was born, he really wanted that first little box. And so he went to that box, and he wanted it, and his grandparents said, no, 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 you can't have that box. So he cried and cried and cried and cried, and finally everybody was like, give him the box! And his grandfather opened up that box, and he opened it up, and all them stars floated out into the sky. Raven was happy. Then the next day, he saw that next box, and he wanted it. Really wanted, and he went to go grab it, and his papa said, no, you can't have that box. And so he cried and cried and cried even harder than he had cried that night before. And finally his grandfather said, here, take this then. And Raven, he opened it up, and that moon, it flew out and it went up into the sky. And so Raven went to bed that night. He was just happy with himself. then he woke up the next day and they were playing around and whatnot, and then he finally saw that last big box. And Raven looked at it, but that was his grandfather's greatest treasure. And he wanted it, so he's going to go to it. And his grandfather said, no, no, you can't have that one. And he cried and he cried and he cried and he cried. And finally his grandfather says, fine, you can open up the box.